Hi, welcome to the little library. Today we're gonna read Little Miss Chatterbox, and just because we're gonna celebrate Christmas in June tomorrow, I am also gonna do Little Miss Dottie. So just hold on. This one's gonna be a long one. So let's start with Little Miss Chatterbox. Oh, and this is our new seat we got out here. Little Miss Chatterbox talked more than a lot. She talked all the time, day in and day out, week after week, month after month, year in and year out. She never stopped. She didn't know it, but she even talked in her sleep. Now that is crazy, although I sometimes do it. She had a brother. I bet you can guess what his name was. Can't you? That's right, Mr. Chatterbox. She looks a bit like him, don't you think? You should have heard them when they got together. You couldn't get words in edgeways, or sideways, or anyways. That was a bit of scramble of words. Have you ever heard about somebody being able to talk the hind leg off a donkey? Well, Mr. Chatterbox could talk both hind legs off a donkey, and his sister could talk the hind leg off an elephant. And now, this story is about the time Little Miss Chatterbox decided to get herself a job, which she did, in a bank in Happy Land. There. At 10 o'clock one Monday morning, Mr. Happy strolled into the Happy to Lend You bank in the middle of Happy Town. He took out his checkbook, wrote a check, and went into the counter. Behind the counter, on her first morning at work, stood Little Miss Chatterbox. She smiled at Mr. Happy. Mr. Happy smiled back. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "Well," said Little Miss Chatterbox, taking a deep breath. For the time of year, it is a good morning, but not quite as good as the morning we had yesterday. And I dare say tomorrow morning will be an even better morning. But it's quite a good morning for a Monday morning." And she went on and on and on until it was time for the bank to shut. Mr. Happy was still standing there with his mouth open in amazement. He'd been there for hours. Oh, here, maybe I should flip it the other way. There. Now that is crazy. "And now," continued Little Miss Chatterbox, "it's time for the bank to shut and time for me to go home. So goodbye, and a nice day talking to you." And she went home, leaving poor Mr. Happy without any money. Oh, now that is bad. The following morning, she was fired. She got herself another job in a restaurant, the Eat-A-Lot. It was Tuesday morning, and at midday, Mr. Greedy walked into the restaurant and sat himself down at his usual corner table. He always ate there on Tuesdays because it was the day they served extra large portions. The waitress came up to take his order. "What's the soup of the day?" Mr. Greedy asked the waitress. Can you guess who that waitress is in the picture? "Well," said Little Miss Chatterbox, for she was the waitress, The soup of the day is tomato, but we also have other soups on the menu, such as oxtail and vegetable and chicken noodle. We have lots of other things to start with, such as, and she went on and on and on until midnight. Mr. Green was still sitting there, listening in amazement. Mr. Green was still sitting. Oh, right. He'd been there for 12 hours listening. Wow. She could probably talk off this house here. She just talked for a whole day. And now, continued little Miss Chatterbox, it's time for the Eat-A-Lot restaurant to shut and time for me to go home. So, goodbye, and nice talking to you. And she went home, leaving poor Mr. Greedy feeling rather empty in the stomach. I added the stomach. Empty. We don't know what he's empty of. So, I added the stomach. Next morning, she was fired. The same thing happened all week long. On Thursday morning, she was fired from her job as an assistant in a hat shop. Miss Splendid went to the shop to buy herself a new hat, but she couldn't. Oh, Mom, I've just the hat for you. I know you're going to love it because it's pink, and pink is your color, and it was all talk and no hat. Poor little Miss Splendid, poor Mr. Greedy, and poor Mr. Happy. On Friday morning, she was fired from her job as a security to Mr. Uppity. Mr. Uppity indeedly was the richest man in the world. I just thought you'd like to know, but poor Mr. Uppity didn't make money the day that little Miss Chatterbox was working for him. Oh no. Oh, Mr. Uppity, I've never worked in an office before, and isn't it exciting? And would you like a cup of coffee? And are you as rich as everyone says you are? And it was all talk and no work. Poor Mr. Uppity, he's probably pretty mad. And Little Miss Chatterbox is probably pretty tired because she's like, I keep on getting fired, probably. But this story has a happy ending because at the very end of that week, Little Miss Chatterbox managed to find herself a job that suited her down to the ground and up to the sky. That Saturday evening, Mr. Chatterbox was at home in Chatterbox Cottage, which is where he lived. That sounds obvious. Mr. Chatterbox was cross because his watch had stopped and he had arranged to meet little Miss Sunshine at 7 o'clock, and he had no idea what time it was. So he decided to telephone the speaking clock to find out what time it was. He dialed the number. But who do you think answered the phone? At the third stroke, it'll be 6:25 and 15 seconds. Little Miss Chatterbox took a deep breath. Pip, pip, pip. At the third stroke, it'll be 6:25 and 20 seconds. Pip, pip, pip. That's funny, thought Mr. Chatterbox to himself. That sounds just like my sister. And so it is. And that's Little Miss Chatterbox. Thanks for watching this one.